In today's video, we're going to explore 5 powerful strategies grounded in Stoicism and dark psychology that will teach you how to destroy your enemy without lifting a finger. You don't have to fight back physically to win. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is the mind. Each section will focus on a key Stoic or psychological principle that allows you to manipulate situations and control outcomes, leaving your enemies in the dust, all without engaging in physical conflict. So let's break down these 5 lethal strategies. Let's dive in with the first strategy. Number 1, use emotional detachment to dismantle your enemy's power. Strategy number 1, use emotional detachment. This is one of the most powerful tactics you can employ when dealing with an enemy. The first rule of any battle, whether it's physical or psychological, is never to let your emotions control you. When you react emotionally, you lose control, and that's when your enemy can manipulate you. Emotional detachment is the ability to stay calm, composed, and unshaken, no matter how your opponent tries to provoke you. Think about it. When someone attacks you, what are they trying to do? They're trying to trigger you, to get you to react emotionally so they can control the situation. When you allow yourself to fall into that trap, you give them exactly what they want: your energy, your attention, and your power. The Stoics understood this principle better than anyone. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoics, often reminded himself that he could not control what others did or said, but he could control how he responded. His philosophy was simple: control your reactions, and you control the outcome. When you detach emotionally, you stop giving your enemy the power to make you angry, upset, or fearful. You regain control. Imagine you're in a confrontation where someone is belittling you or insulting you. Your natural instinct might be to respond with anger or defend yourself. But when you practice emotional detachment, you pause, and instead of reacting impulsively, you assess the situation calmly. By staying composed, your enemy is left with nothing to feed off. They will get frustrated and confused. Why? Because they expect you to react. Without that emotional payoff, they start to realize their tactics aren't working. They start to question themselves. Are they losing control? They might even begin to doubt their own power. The more detached you remain, the weaker they feel. You see, detachment isn't about being cold or indifferent. It's about maintaining your inner peace and choosing how you will respond, not letting external factors dictate your state of mind. This is a fundamental Stoic belief. What happens around you doesn't determine your happiness. Only your reactions do. Emotional detachment isn't something that happens overnight. It's a skill you cultivate with practice. It starts with recognizing your triggers, those things that provoke you to anger, frustration, or anxiety. Once you know your triggers, you can consciously decide to stay calm, no matter what. So, next time someone tries to provoke you or push your buttons, remind yourself, you are the one in control of your emotions. You can either give in to the chaos, or you can remain calm and let your enemy unravel. The more detached you become, the more power you'll have in any situation. If you're committed to mastering emotional detachment, comment, "I control my emotions" below and hit like to show you're ready to take back your power. Now, let's move on to the second strategy. Number 2, manipulate their expectations with silence. Strategy number 2, manipulate their expectations with silence. Silence is more than just the absence of words. It's a psychological weapon that can completely disarm your enemy and turn the tide in your favor. In the art of war, silence is often a far more potent weapon than words or actions. But why is silence so powerful? Let's break it down. When you don't respond to your enemy's provocations, you break the pattern. Most people expect a response, whether it's a defense, a counterattack, or even an emotional outburst. Silence creates uncertainty. It forces your opponent to question their own actions and motives. They'll start to wonder, why aren't they reacting? What am I missing? This psychological gap is incredibly uncomfortable for your enemy. Silence leaves them in the dark, where they can't predict your next move. They'll begin to doubt themselves, and the longer you stay silent, the more they'll try to provoke you, wasting energy, time, and resources. In dark psychology, this principle is called the power of unpredictability. Your silence makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability is one of the most effective ways to confuse and dominate your opponent. When they don't know how you'll react, they are forced to question their every move. This constant questioning erodes their confidence and puts them on edge. The longer they wait for a response from you, the more anxious they become. Eventually, they'll make a mistake because they can't handle the uncertainty. This strategy also taps into a key Stoic principle: self-mastery. The Stoics taught that one of the greatest forms of power is the ability to remain in control of your own actions, and silence is an expression of that control. By choosing silence over reaction, you remove yourself from the chaos of the situation, preventing your emotions from being manipulated. Imagine someone insults you or tries to bait you into a confrontation. Your natural reaction might be to defend yourself, retaliate, or try to set the record straight. But what if instead you chose silence? What if you said nothing at all? This sends a powerful message to your enemy. You are not worth my time, and your words do not affect me. It shifts the power dynamic and forces them to realize that their attempt to provoke you was futile. They'll start questioning their own behavior. The more they push, the more you remain silent, the more frustrated they become. Let's say you're dealing with someone in a toxic relationship or a workplace adversary who tries to manipulate or control you with their words. Instead of engaging in their game, choose to ignore the bait. If they try to engage you in gossip, ignore it. If they try to put you down, say nothing. You'll notice over time that they begin to lose interest. Your silence tells them that their words have no power over you, and that makes them uncomfortable. They will either escalate or they'll back off, exhausted by the lack of response. The beauty of this strategy is that it's completely under your control. You choose when to speak and when not to. You choose when to engage and when to remain silent. Silence is a strategic choice that puts you in the driver's seat of the conversation. If you're ready to manipulate the expectations of those around you and leverage the power of silence in your life, comment, "Silence is power," and hit like. Now let's move on to the third strategy. Number 3, control the narrative and reframe the situation. Strategy number 3, control the narrative and reframe the situation. In the psychological battlefield, the power of perception is everything. Your enemy may try to define the story, push their agenda, or manipulate your actions, but you hold the real power when you control the narrative. If you allow others to control the story, you're always playing on their terms. But when you learn to reframe the situation, you take the upper hand. Reframing is a classic psychological tactic. It involves changing the context of a situation to make it more favorable to you. It's not about lying or deceiving. It's about offering a different perspective that shifts the focus away from your weaknesses and onto your strengths. In Stoicism, this is known as changing your perception of external events in order to maintain your inner peace and control over the situation. Let's say someone accuses you of something you didn't do. The natural instinct might be to deny, defend, or explain yourself. But what if you didn't react in the way they expected? Instead, reframe the situation by acknowledging their accusation without defensiveness, but shift the conversation to something positive that shows your integrity or strength. You could say something like, "Yes, I understand how you might see it that way, but let me explain why I chose the path I did. Here's the bigger picture. By reframing, you not only gain control over the conversation, but also take away the power your opponent has in defining you. You turn their attack into an opportunity for you to control the message. When you steer the conversation toward your values, principles, or vision, you shape the way others perceive you, making it harder for them to challenge you. This is a core Stoic idea. Our happiness and peace of mind don't come from external events, but from how we interpret those events. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, taught us that events themselves are neither good nor bad. They are simply neutral. What matters is how we react to them, how we frame them in our minds. Here's an example of how reframing can work in your life. Let's say your colleague criticizes your work in front of others. Rather than feeling embarrassed or defensive, you could reframe the situation by turning their criticism into constructive feedback. You could say, "I appreciate your input. It gives me a chance to improve, and I'm always open to learning." Now, instead of your colleague controlling the narrative, you've redefined the situation to show growth, confidence, and maturity. Reframing also works when dealing with challenges. Instead of seeing an obstacle as a setback, see it as an opportunity for growth. Stoic philosophers like Epictetus emphasize that we are not victims of circumstances. We are the masters of our interpretation of those circumstances. When you control how you perceive challenges, you will always find a way to turn them into stepping stones towards success. In every situation, remember, you can reframe the narrative. You don't need to play by the rules your enemy sets. By changing the story, you shift the power back into your hands. If you're ready to take control of every conversation and situation you encounter, comment, "I am the storyteller," and hit like. Now, let's move on to strategy number 4. Number 4, make them overextend themselves. Strategy number 4, make them overextend themselves. This is a psychological maneuver rooted in the principle of letting your enemy expose their own weaknesses and exhaust their own resources. In the game of power, it's not always about taking action. It's about allowing your opponent to dig their own grave by taking on too much, too quickly. Imagine you're facing someone who is competing with you, trying to outdo you, or engaging in a conflict with you. The natural reaction might be to defend yourself or retaliate, but instead, you take a step back and let them push themselves too hard. You don't need to fight them directly. Just sit back and watch them overextend themselves. This technique is deeply rooted in dark psychology, specifically the concept of self-sabotage. When someone overestimates their abilities and takes on too much, they often make reckless decisions that can lead to failure. The more they try to control, the more they spread themselves thin, and the more likely they are to fall apart. You do nothing but wait for them to falter. The beauty of this strategy lies in its simplicity. Instead of engaging in a battle of wills, you let your enemy waste their energy, stretch their resources, and make impulsive decisions. They'll be so caught up in their own ambitions, they won't realize they're heading toward disaster, and when they eventually crash, they'll have no one to blame but themselves. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, often spoke about the importance of not overexerting yourself. He knew that it was better to be strategic and patient rather than reckless and impulsive. By staying calm and not reacting emotionally, you can allow your enemies to make mistakes on their own, and those mistakes will be their undoing. Let's look at an example. Imagine a rival at work is constantly trying to one-up you, seeking attention, trying to take on multiple projects at once in order to outshine you. They push themselves to meet impossible deadlines, take on more responsibility than they can handle, and ultimately put themselves in a position where they can't manage the pressure. You, on the other hand, stay composed, focus on your work, and remain calm under pressure. As they begin to falter, their anxiety grows. They miss deadlines, fail to deliver, and make mistakes. Meanwhile, you're steady and consistent. Over time, their overextension becomes evident to everyone around them. People start to notice their lack of control and lack of competence. They make enemies in the process, burn out, and ultimately fail, all because they overextended themselves, trying to outdo you. This strategy isn't about being passive. It's about being patient. Let them push themselves into a corner. Let them make mistakes and expose their weaknesses. Eventually, they'll wear themselves out and expose the cracks in their armor. Epictetus, another great Stoic, reminds us that we are often our own worst enemies. We fall into traps when we stretch ourselves too thin, trying to control every aspect of our lives. When you allow your enemies to overextend, they fall into the same trap. So, how can you implement this strategy? Start by being calm and measured. Don't engage in power struggles. Observe your opponent's actions and allow them to take on more than they can handle. Let them stretch themselves thin and wait for them to burn out. When they do, you'll be there, calm, collected, and in control. If you understand the power of patience and the value of letting your enemies overextend themselves, comment, "I let them burn out" below and hit like. Now, let's dive into the final strategy. Number 5, use their own tactics against them. Strategy number 5, use their own tactics against them. This strategy involves taking your enemy's own weapons and turning them into tools for your advantage. It's a brilliant psychological maneuver that undermines their power and leaves them powerless against your calculated response. This is where you leverage their tactics, their moves, and their actions, and use them to dismantle them. One of the most powerful forms of psychological warfare is mirror manipulation. Mirror manipulation involves reflecting your opponent's behavior back onto them, thereby trapping them in their own web of tactics. If they insult you, you remain calm. If they try to manipulate you, you mirror their manipulation, but in a way that makes them feel vulnerable and exposed. This is where the art of reframing also comes in. Reframing means you don't just take their words at face value. You shift the meaning. You don't fall into their narrative, but rather you change the context of the situation so it works in your favor. In essence, you control the lens through which the situation is seen. Seneca, a Stoic philosopher, understood the power of this approach. He often emphasized how insults and attacks are like weapons that can only harm you if you allow them to. The real power lies in how you choose to perceive and respond to those insults. Instead of getting defensive or trying to explain yourself, you could instead mirror their attacks. If someone tries to undermine your character, for instance, you could calmly acknowledge their criticism while exposing the flaws in their reasoning. Doing so shifts the power dynamic. Their attack is no longer about you. It's about their own inability to see things clearly. Let's say you're dealing with a workplace rival who's been spreading rumors about you, trying to discredit you. Instead of defending yourself aggressively or resorting to counterattacks, mirror their behavior. Instead of engaging with their gossip, you simply turn it back on them. You could say, "I've heard that you've been telling people I'm incompetent. What exactly makes you think that?" Now, you've subtly exposed their hypocrisy. They're the ones attacking you, but you're using their attack to expose their motives and intentions. This tactic works because humans are uncomfortable with hypocrisy. The more your enemy tries to manipulate or harm you, the more they reveal their own insecurities, flaws, and contradictions. When you expose this, you flip the situation entirely. Suddenly, they're the ones on the defensive, not you. You remain calm, measured, and in control while they spiral into confusion. Using their own tactics also works in situations where they try to manipulate the narrative. Let's say someone tries to gaslight you. making you doubt your own perception of reality. Instead of losing your mind, you take a calm, factual approach. Every time they try to manipulate the facts, you calmly mirror their statements back to them, questioning their inconsistencies, which will leave them feeling exposed and vulnerable. This strategy isn't just about defeating them in the moment. It's about outsmarting them and showing them that their manipulations are both transparent and powerless against your composed and strategic response. The channel where we dive deep into ancient wisdom and modern psychological strategies to unlock your inner strength. If you're ready to take control of your life and master the art of mental warfare, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a game-changing video.